death of Princess Grace that daughter Stephanie was actually driving. Now an intensive investigation says it's found the final truth.
On September 13, 1982, the serene roads of the French Riviera bore witness to a tragedy that would resonate across the world and bring an abrupt, sorrowful end to a fairy tale life. Grace Kelly, once Hollywood royalty and now Princess of Monaco, was driving with her youngest daughter, Princess Stéphanie, along the winding, narrow Route de la Turbie. The drive from their cliffside summer home at Rocaguel to the Prince's Palace of Monaco should have been an ordinary trip on a familiar path. Yet, it ended in a manner no one could have predicted, leaving behind a tale of both mystery and mourning that would linger for decades. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. The morning sun was bright, casting a gentle warmth across the hillsides of the Côte d'Azur. Grace Kelly, a seasoned driver who preferred the comfort of taking the wheel herself, decided to drive her British Rover P 3500 on this journey. She often enjoyed the independence and normalcy of driving, a remnant of her former life in America before becoming Princess Grace of Monaco. The Rover, a sturdy car, was well suited for the twists and turns of the rugged terrain. Stephanie, then just 17, sat beside her mother, seemingly enjoying the drive and their time together. Conversations were light, tinged with the bittersweetness of impending separation, as Stephanie was soon to leave for school in Paris. However, as they descended the serpentine curves of the mountain road, the idyllic drive turned disastrous. The stretch of road, known for its sharp hairpin turns and perilous drops without guardrails in certain sections, demanded the utmost concentration and skill from any driver. As Grace maneuvered one of the sharper bends near the village of La Turbie, something went terribly wrong. Eyewitnesses reported seeing the car behaving erratically, swerving in and out of the lane, as if Grace was struggling to maintain control. Then, without warning, the Rover veered sharply to the left, crossed the center line, and plunged off the side of the road. The car tumbled down a steep embankment, approximately 120 feet through dense brush and jagged rocks. The descent was chaotic, a terrifying blend of metal crunching, glass shattering, and the visceral sounds of the car's frame contorting under the force of the impact. Inside, Grace and Stephanie were violently tossed about. The vehicle's descent was brutal, and every collision with the rocky terrain worsened the damage. Grace, who later reports would suggest may have suffered a mild stroke just moments before the crash, appeared to have lost consciousness shortly after the car left the road. Stephanie, in the passenger seat, was conscious but helpless, battered by the jarring motions and frantic with fear. The Rover finally came to a stop, its front end crumpled against a cluster of rocks. The windshield shattered, and the driver's side door crushed inwards, pinning Grace against her seat. The crash site was not easily accessible. It took precious minutes for the first responders to navigate the treacherous terrain to reach the wreckage. Local residents, alerted by the sound of the crash, were the first to arrive and immediately called for emergency services. When they reached the scene, they found Stephanie, dazed and injured but alive, trying desperately to pull her mother from the wreckage. Grace, however, remained unresponsive, slumped over the steering wheel, trapped by the crumpled metal of the car. Rescuers worked frantically to free Grace, who was unconscious and barely breathing. The damage to the vehicle was severe. Every door was jammed, the frame bent almost beyond recognition. Firefighters had to use hydraulic tools, carefully cutting through the twisted metal, knowing that any sudden movements could worsen Grace's condition. The extraction was painstaking and slow, a race against time as they struggled to stabilize her. When they finally freed her from the wreckage, it was evident that her injuries were critical. She was suffering from severe trauma to her chest and abdomen, broken ribs, and a fractured leg, injuries compounded by the initial suspected stroke. Grace was airlifted by helicopter to the Monaco hospital in a desperate bid to save her life. As the helicopter lifted off from the hillside, carrying her frail body towards the hospital, a sense of dread swept through the rescue team and onlookers who had gathered. The once vibrant princess, who had graced the silver screen and charmed millions around the world, was now fighting for her life in the most tragic of circumstances. At the hospital, the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize her. The news of the crash spread rapidly, and soon the hospital grounds were filled with journalists, photographers, and concerned citizens, all hoping for a miracle. Princess Grace had been a beloved figure not only in Monaco, but globally, a symbol of grace, elegance, and the epitome of a modern-day fairy tale. As doctors performed emergency surgery, trying to stem internal bleeding and address the damage caused by the crash, her family and close friends gathered, their faces drawn with worry and grief. Despite the medical team's best efforts, the prognosis was bleak. The combination of the suspected stroke and the severe trauma from the crash left Grace with little chance of recovery. After several hours of surgery, the doctors delivered the devastating news to her family. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco, had succumbed to her injuries. She was pronounced dead on September 14, 1982, just one day after the accident, at the age of 52. The news of her death sent shockwaves around the world. In Monaco, the atmosphere was one of profound sorrow and disbelief. The streets of Monte Carlo were silent, save for the whispers and sobs of the mourning crowd. The palace issued an official statement confirming her death and requesting privacy and prayers for the grieving family. The day that began with sunshine ended in a twilight of sadness, a stark contrast to the glamour and joy that Princess Grace had always embodied. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from every corner of the globe. From Hollywood to the small Principality of Monaco, people remembered Grace not just for her beauty and elegance, but for her warmth, kindness, and the grace with which she carried her dual roles as a princess and a public figure. Her funeral, held at the Cathedral of Monaco, was attended by royalty, celebrities, and dignitaries from around the world. The streets of Monaco were lined with mourners, some clutching photographs, others holding flowers, all paying their respects to a woman who had touched so many lives. The tragic end of Grace Kelly remains a poignant reminder of life's fragility, a tale of a beloved princess whose story, filled with grace and poise, ended too soon on a winding road in the French Riviera. Her death marked the end of an era, but her memory lives on in the hearts of those who admired her, a lasting legacy of a life lived with elegance and style. As we remember Grace Kelly today, let us honor her memory by reflecting on the light she brought into the world and the indelible mark she left on both the silver screen and the principality she called home.